Hey everybody, this is my black ghost knife fish tank, and we're going to try something a little bit different. I've been trying to shoot a video about my black ghost knife fish for a little while now, and I just can't get it right. So I've given up what I was trying to do, and we're just going to let the video roll while I've got some food in the tank. And hopefully we'll get a little look at the black ghost knife fish, because we very, very seldom see it. Yet I did see it out in its secondary cave. It normally hides in that cave that you've got front dead center. Here, I'll put my hand and show you. This cave right here is where it normally lives, but now back in this area it's been in there. So keep your eyes out for any movement or black and white glimpses and flashes you might see over in that side of the tank, because that's probably going to be your best look at my black ghost knife fish. So the video I was trying to shoot about it, one of my viewers had asked me if I could shoot a video and go over my experiences and so on and so forth, and I don't really have a whole lot of experiences to talk about. I am going to feed my other fish while we're looking at this one, so if my voice fades and comes and goes, I'm walking around the room, your audio is not bad. I don't do species profiles just because that information is so readily available online that you don't need me to tell you what water temperature to keep your fish at and so on and so forth. But real quickly, I will say that the black ghost knife fish is a fairly adaptable fish. They can tolerate soft water, they can tolerate fairly hard water, pH anywhere from like 6 to 8, provided you don't bounce them around or slam them from one condition to another. You acclimate them properly. Most people's water, whether you've got hard water or soft water, will be good enough for a black ghost knife fish. They do need clean water, they do need stable water, but the stability is the key. You've got to keep them in a nice, stable condition. They're very sensitive to water parameters bouncing around. They're also considered to be a scaleless fish, so if you're medicating the tank or anything like that, you've got to consider treating it as though you've got a scaleless fish in the tank, and do half doses of medication and so on and so forth, just for the sensitivity aspect of the fish. They're a very reclusive fish. They like to hide. Their natural habitat is dimly lit, vegetation covered. They alternate between fast-moving river conditions most of the year, so they do like good, vigorous water movement in the tank, but they also migrate into flooded flooded forest basins when it's the wet season. So they can also tolerate moderate water flow in a tank. Again, they're very adaptable fish. The tricky parts come into keeping them. The reason you need to have a little experience in keeping them is, again, you need to really maintain the stability of the water. The water doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be stable. You can't bounce these fish around a lot. They can't tolerate ups and downs and swings and shifts in pH and stuff like that. Nice, stable water is very important for them. They don't like to be kept with other of their own kind, and I will say that that includes any of the electrical fish. These are mormyrids, so an elephant nose fish, for example, would not be a good fish to keep in the same tank. They are both electric fish. They use a low voltage electrical field to navigate. They're not electric in the same way like an electric eel. They can't shock anything, or they don't use it to incapacitate their prey, but they do use it to find their way around in the dark, and they find the little electrical signals of the muscles of their prey animals and so on and so forth. Having said that, they are a predatory fish, so they need a meaty diet. I've never really had any problem with fish disappearing out of that tank, with the exception of neons. Now, neons, just about any tank that a neon is kept that has any kind of predator in it at all, the neons are going to get eaten up, and it's probably going to happen at night, and that's because the neons sleep down near the bottom of the tank. So in my gourami tank, for example, I've got a striped Raphael catfish. It's not like a gulper catfish. It's not real huge appetite, but neons disappear out of that tank and they do it at night, and it's just because of that reason. So I have given up on keeping neons in my black ghost knifefish tank there, but other than that, I haven't had any real issues with it being an aggressive predatory fish. I've got lots and lots of little glow light tetras in there. None of them have ever been devoured that I know of. The little Raspora hets, they're very small fish. They get left alone. So, again, not a lot of issues on my end with predation in the tank, you know, with it being a predatory fish. My only real experience with it, though, is just the seclusion aspect. I know other people have had different experiences, and I don't want to try to make it sound like this is how black ghost knifefish are, because I've seen other people that can hand feed their black ghost knifefish. When they come into, you know, they open the tank lid and the fish positively comes over to greet them. Mine is not like that. I have had no visible experience with this fish over the years. If you compiled all the time I've had my eyes on that fish for the entire 5 years that I've owned it, I bet it wouldn't comprise a full hour of my life that I've seen that fish in the last 5 years. I don't want to talk about it as though it's a bad fish, but it's definitely one of those fish that's on my I'd never buy this one again list, because I just don't see any point in it. I've really had no experience with that fish other than it's in that tank, and I now have to do the maintenance on the tank because I've got that fish in there. But I really personally don't really get to see any benefit of it. I don't get the pleasure of it. Now, I know that some other people have recommended you can put little clear pieces of plastic, you know, acrylic tubing, and then that will give the fish the sense of security by hiding in the pipe, but you can still see it. I don't like things like pieces of pipe in my fish tanks, you know. I see broken pieces of pipe and stuff laying at the bottom of the river and everything, and I never think it looks natural or attractive. I'm certainly not going to put something like that in one of my fish tanks. So I would rather just not see the black ghost knifefish than have to look in my tank and see what looks like some discarded refuse lying on the bottom of my tank. And that's just my personal opinion. If you don't mind having a piece of plastic tubing, then that's a good option for you. You can put a piece of plastic tubing in the tank. The black ghost knifefish will hide in the plastic tubing thinking it's safe and secure, and yet of course you'll be able to see right through the clear tubing and enjoy your fish. But again, that's just not really my cup of meat. I'm not going to really be having any plastic tubing in my tanks. Other than that, I can't really think of a whole lot to say about it. I've gone over the water parameters for the most part. That's pretty much most people's water. We've gone over the food. You're going to have to do meaty type food. You don't necessarily need to do live food, but I do things like shrimp pellets, and I put in bloodworms occasionally. I'll also occasionally put in tubifex worms and things like that. But shrimp pellets is my main staple food that goes in there for the black ghost knifefish. And I also crunch up a lot of the high-calorie algae wafers. I'm a really, really big fan of the high-calorie algae wafers. They're made with spirulina, and they have complete protein in it. So it's the kind of protein that if it's a carnivore, it's a satisfactory protein for a carnivore, whereas like soy protein, for example, would not be. It's not the full, complete protein that you get with the spirulina. And I've never really had any issues with it not eating. I see it come out and it eats those algae wafers regularly. So I've always kind of considered them and the shrimp pellets to be my staple foods for my black ghost knifefish. And again, I do the treats of the, you know, bloodworms and stuff like that occasionally, but the shrimp pellets and the algae wafers seem to be adequate. They do get big. You will read that they should be between a 75 and a 100-gallon tank. So I will address that for a moment since I've got mine in a 40. Fish that get really big do it in different ways. Some fish get really big really fast. Other fish get really big eventually. I'm not sure. I don't have experience with the black ghost knifefish other than this one. But in 5 years, it has not gotten huge. I got a nice good spike of growth in the first 2 years, and I thought, wow, if this keeps up, you know, I'm in trouble. But it didn't keep up. It slowed down, and it's continued to grow, and it's probably a good 8 inches now, maybe 9 inches. But it's a long, slender, tapering fish, so 9 inches is not as bad as it sounds when you consider that goes all the way to the tip of its tail. Eventually I might have to move it out of this tank. I don't know. It just depends on how slow it grows and how long it lives. Just because a fish can get up to 20 inches, which these fish can, doesn't mean it will get up to 20 inches. That's not the guaranteed minimum size. You know, it's how big they might get someday under the right conditions with the right genetics. You know, I often compare humans. You know, my next door neighbor is 5'6" and Shaquille O'Neal is not. But they're both humans and they're both adult males that fall within the normal range of size, but if you stood them side by side, you'd think they came from different planets. So fish that get up to 20 inches doesn't mean every single one of them will be 20 inches. Some of them may not get over 12 or 13 or whatever. So I don't know how big my fish is going to get ultimately. I am prepared someday to remove it from the tank or rehome it or whatever if it gets too big, or if it's showing signs of basically being, I can't even think of the word I'm looking for, the growth being restricted, stunted, that's the word I'm looking for. I'm seeing no signs of it being stunted. The idea that a fish will only grow to the size of the tank you put it in is utter rubbish. That's just a complete myth. That's not true at all. What happens is the fish will become stunted. You know, it's like saying that foot binding is, oh, your feet will only grow to the size of the shoe they're in. That's not true. Or it may be, depending on how you want to look at it, but it doesn't mean it's right and proper, and it doesn't mean terrible things aren't happening to the foot inside. So a fish that stays small because it's being confined into a too small tank is not good. It's not only growing to the size of its tank. It's being stunted and it's growing abnormally. I'm not seeing any signs of that. When I do get glimpses of this fish, and I do occasionally see it dart from one side of the tank to the other, it looks normal. Its behavior hasn't changed in all the years I've owned it. It doesn't seem as though it's, you know, it's not getting too big. I'm aware of that. I'm aware that that is something that's going to be an issue down the road. But I'm also aware that it's taken 5 years for it to get to the size that it's gotten. So I'm not going to tell anybody to worry too much about it. That is not the mothership landing. That is my laundry being done. You know, if you've got a 10-gallon tank, don't go buy a black ghost knifefish. If you've got a 20-gallon tank, don't go buy a black ghost knifefish. If you've got a 55 or you've got a 40 breeder and you're thinking about it, but you're worried about will it outgrow, just go ahead and get your fish. You've got years, literally years, to worry about what you're going to do with that fish when it gets too big for that tank. It's a great experience to own one. If you want to have one and you've got a suitable medium-sized tank, go ahead and get yourself one. If you got a little bit of skill, you know, you got a little bit of experience keeping fish, you're comfortable that you can maintain a good, stable environment, don't let the size of it intimidate you. If it does get to be too big for your 40-gallon tank or your 55 or whatever, that's going to be way down the road. You've got plenty of time to think about a contingency plan of where you're going to home it. It may not even be alive that long. You may not even be alive that long. So don't worry about it outgrowing your tank rapidly. They're not fast growers. The one I've got in here, and apparently we're just not going to see it at all, and of course me standing here, you know, basically shouting at the tank is probably not the best way to get it to come out either. But the one I've got in here, as I said, is about 9 inches long, you know, maybe a little bit bigger, and it's time to start thinking about rehoming it, but right now it's still okay, and it's been in here for 5 years. So make what you want of that. I'm sure I'm going to get section, you know, comments down in the comment section below, and that's fine too. Feel free to leave your comments or thoughts or opinions if you've had different experiences, or hopefully if you've had better experiences with the black ghost knifefish, then go ahead and put them down in the comment section below as well. And in the meantime, I'm going to say go ahead and subscribe while you're here. That way you won't miss anything. You never know what it's going to be with me. And don't forget, this one here is my black ghost knifefish tank. So I hope that was helpful to somebody. Hope that was some valuable information for whatever that was worth. Again, if you want a species profile, you can go ahead and just look that up anywhere. But if you want my personal experience with keeping the black ghost knifefish, that's pretty much been it in a nutshell. It hides all the time and I never see it. So thanks again. Make sure you're subscribed. Don't forget my black ghost knifefish tank. I'll see you real soon in the next one.